So in other words, if the judge were or other people reviewing the documents in that case, they would have to read the whole of David Ray Griffin's book, and they'd
And then
have
they
to
still don't
read
find
Stephen E.
Pentagon.
Jones's
Yeah.
paper, but that didn't directly
Implicate
address.
them.
Yeah, that didn't directly address April Gallup's case, because the book wasn't about April Gallup's situation in the Pentagon exactly. It didn't. I don't know if it referred to her, but they would have needed to submit an affidavit that what they were writing was true and applicable to what happened to April Gallup and why. That would have been surely what you would do in an
Sworn under
affidavit.
oath.
Yeah,
and
sworn under oath that this was true, because when you submit an affidavit, you're then, if you are found to be not telling the truth, when you're put under cross-examination, then you could be either fined or sent to prison for that. So they weren't putting themselves into that. This is David Ray Griffin and Stephen E. Jones. They were not putting themselves into that situation. In other words, they weren't standing by what they said was true. Now, going back to Dr. Wood's case, I wasn't, I wasn't at the World Trade Center when 9/11 happened, and I wasn't, I'm not a qualified scientist like Dr. Wood is, but I did nevertheless submit an affidavit, because I felt that if I was to be called as some kind of witness or something in that court case, I wanted to make sure that the people involved with the case knew that I was serious about what I was saying, and that to the best of my knowledge, everything I'd said about it was true. So I was, when I think Jerry Leapart suggested that I submit an affidavit, I can't remember, I think he suggested it, but I honestly can't remember it was me that suggested it, but he agreed to it, but whatever the way around it was done. And I had no qualms about doing that. I was absolutely, totally committed to doing that.
And John Hutchison submitted one too.
Correct. Yeah. So these people that say that John is a fraudster, then it's a very strange thing to do, to submit an affidavit in a court case.
And Stephen Jones would not do such a thing.
Right, and he didn't. So again, what does that tell people when they study these details? But it's easy in these talk shows to kind of gloss over these sorts of details.
Because they're entertainment. They're not not sworn testimony.
Yes, yes. And that's the difference. So, this is the difference between theorizing and actually presenting real evidence in, the real world, as it were, where you're actually trying to solve a case or reopen a case or further the understanding using legal means, getting documents revealed, putting people under oath, holding people accountable for what they've done, in the case of those contractors that work for NIST, at least. That's the difference.
I submitted evidence in my case. I was not sanctioned, fined. Sanction is a, kind of fine or punishment by the courts. I was not sanctioned for filing a frivolous case because I did not file, it wasn't seen that I filed a frivolous case. I had evidence to support what I put forward. April Gallup's case, they put forward conspiracy theories, not evidence.
Yeah. Further down the article, it says here, to state that Professor Griffin and I only offer only conclusory statements and personal opinions without evidentiary support is incorrect and misleading, to say the least. We provide ample evidentiary support in published papers, including papers in established peer-reviewed journals such as The Environmentalist.
But he wouldn't swear under oath that those were correct.
Nope. Yeah, so it puts out a good article asking for, can we help?
It's a magic show. It's a magic show.
It is. People read that and think, oh, they're really trying to help her. And really they're not. Really.
They were using her.
Oh, absolutely. Was she not encouraged to do this?
She was encouraged. I saw the email from David Ray Griffin to April Gallup encouraging her to file the case.
Excellent. Excellent. There you go.
And the same with William. What is
Helen Mariani?
No, Kevin Ryan.
Oh yeah.
to get him to file. David Griffin encouraged him to file against NIST for wrong, and then to represent Underwriters Lab and tell NIST that they're wrong, but that got him fired because he was representing the steel department, not the wastewater treatment department. Kevin Wright is a chemist who deals with wastewater treatment plants. This is my understanding, but he represented himself as like a materials engineer. It would be like my when I was a faculty member at Clemson, if I had written a letter to somebody representing the biology department about a biological issue, that'd be misrepresentation. So anyway, David Ray Griffin egged him on, and he filed something representing Underwriters Lab's steel tests. He worked for Underwriters Lab, but in water treatment measurements, and so he was fired for that misrepresentation. And then he played it up as wrongful termination. But I think he initially was a sacrificial lamb, so to speak, from being egged on to make noise. They say, "Oh, see, you shouldn't speak up because you can get fired."
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen Richard Gage in talks where members of the audience have asked him, "You've got all this evidence. Why aren't you submitting it into a court case?" And he says, "We're not lawyers. What we do is we put this evidence out for you to do that."
But he's an architect from San Francisco who doesn't even know about seismic charts. So why is he, he's not qualified to do what he's doing either?
No. He's an architect, not an engineer.
Yeah, architects that's something that I think the audience might benefit knowing about. Architects are like artists of buildings. How's the space feel in this design? How's it feel over here? They aren't worrying about the strength of the steel here. How many bolts do you need? How many acres of concrete and how thick, how much rebar goes in this concrete? That's what engineers do.
An architect will go, "Shall we put an arch in this doorway?" "Engineer, is it possible to make this into an archway?" And it has to get clarification to make sure it's feasible.
Yeah, can we make this an archway here? Is there enough support? Without, we want this to appear to be balanced on nothing. You've seen some really interesting architecture where it looks like there's nothing supporting something.
Yeah.
That's the concept of it comes from an architect. But then the mechanics of it come from an engineer who figures out how to do it structurally. And then there's the builders who follow directions and build it. In engineering schools, often, they have special watered down statics class for architects, statics for architecture students, because they can't hack it. And that's the first basic engineering course the engineers take. The architects, can't easily hack the math or anything to understand it. And that's basically figuring out F equals ma, or the sum of the forces equal, the sum of the forces on the other side. That's too much for them to handle. So, being an architect doesn't qualify you to understand structural integrity of a building. No way.
So he's not even qualified to actually discuss what he's discussing, is he really, Mr. Gage?
Correct.
I'm talking about you.
Correct. He's not a scientist. He's an artist or a businessman. There's some parts of architecture where they, like you're going to make a strip mall or cut up land into, where the road goes in the subdivision, it curves around, how you're going to chop up the land for putting houses on. That's more of a business type thing, but true architect, and you can look at the designs of famous architects. It's all about how's the building look, how's it make you feel, what's the concept. But remember the twisted building, the torso building. That's not an engineer doing that. That's an architect doing it, an engineer figuring out how to do it. The architect has the idea, but it's like a three-dimensional painting. Sort of like an interior designer in a way. It's more associated with that. How does the space in this room make you feel? Does it inspire you, wake you up, or make you feel empowered? I'm an engineer trying to describe an architect's job. That's the best I can do. But I do know that.
A clip from the Liars page of the Richard Gage getting caught by the guy that he's getting interviewed by. No, it's
Dr. Abe.
Oh well.
No, this is Ralph.
Sorry.
Ralph, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because here we are, an unqualified engineer.
Have you examined all of the? She is extremely highly qualified, which you are not, as a structural physicist, interferometry, to do a complete. She's got the only one out there. She's put her name on the dotted line. To file a case on it, a key tam case, a whistleblower, which I can't believe that you didn't. You admit you don't know, but let's say you don't.
There are dozens of nuts out there with PhDs, Ralph.
Wait a minute, whoa. Calling Dr. Judy Wood yet? Wait a minute.
I said there are dozens of nuts out there that do have PhDs.
Our conversation. Our conversation is,
You're making
have you examined and taken on her book, which she has documented to a great degree? Have you read her book, and are you willing to debunk it? All of these different phenomena. Have you done that, or are you going to do that?
Now, with Judy Wood is not going to acknowledge any of that evidence and just hand wave it away, then she's not practicing science. She's practicing witchcraft. Go ahead.
Well, you know what? The problem that I'm running into here, I have an architect that has no training in this at all, making all kinds of allegations without the evidence. Now, let's not be quiet here.
How can you say without
microspheres, those microspheres.
There you go. I mean, I think we've heard enough. It's just, there you go. We've got an architect here that's not qualified. It's
What is interesting in that clip, though, he says she's totally ignoring the evidence of these iron-rich microspheres, and then the host points out, because he's read my book too. He says, well, she shows this that they have iron-rich microspheres in crop circles in England. You know, that's not proof that you have to get it from thermite, and Gage is saying that it comes from thermite. And he's saying that she ignores that evidence. No, it's right there in my book, showing that it doesn't, mean anything specific. Because how do you explain why you find it in crop circles?
In other words, not only does Dr. Wood not ignore the evidence that Gage claims she ignores, she actually points out that evidence does not, prove what Gage is saying it proves, as we just gave an example there. So it's actually, Gage is completely out of order in both the language that he's using and the claims that he's making. But, neither one is lies and the other is plain rude, so it's rude lies. It's nothing to do with facts.
Right where you cut off, I think, is where he says, after the host points out, well, they're found in crop circles in England, then Gage says something like, well, I've not seen that evidence. I've not seen that evidence. Well, so Gage is...
I'm talking here. Ralph, microspheres were found in crop circles in England, and there was no fire of the exact type of...
I haven't seen the evidence for that, so I can't confirm.
It's right there. That's it. So he's admitting he is ignoring the evidence.
Yeah, he does that all the time. Well, I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that evidence. So so Gage is the one ignoring the evidence, where Dr. Wood is the one who's not only not ignored it, but she's discussed it.
Yeah. He actually says she ignores the evidence in page 120 to 128 of her book. So that means Gage has got your book, and he's read it, or he hasn't read it, he's cherry-picked to the section.
120, page 122, page 123, page 124, and if you notice the comments in that video, from people who have read the book, they say, wait a minute, no, she doesn't say what he's claiming she says. If somebody has the book, look, it says the opposite of what he's saying.
It's very manipulative.